two very hot topics coming. One is the Chinese EdTech scene, and the other one is coding and refugees after that. I don't know if you were here this morning. We talked a little bit about how bullish China is on EdTech. It's a fascinating market for EdTech with more than 9,000 EdTech companies, EdTech market that represents $8 billion, growing 50% a year, and also 30 to 40% of the global venture capital money invested in EdTech being invested in China. So, China will be a superpower of EdTech. It's not even a question mark, it's a fact. I'd like to welcome Sophie, Chen, who is partner at JMDedu, who will moderate this panel. Thank you very much. Bit of music, please.
Great pleasure to be here. And our panelists, could you come on to the stage? Okay. Yeah, thanks all of you for coming to the China panel. So we've seen very rapid development on education technology and education innovations in China, and also growing interest from foreign companies who want to enter into China. So this panel, we're going to talk a little bit about Chinese education market. So first, we're going to do some general ideas on the market situations and trends in the China education market. And then we are going to look at more specific market opportunities, especially for international companies who want to enter into the China market. And then finally, we move to the how question. So are there any strategies or advice our panelists would give for companies who want to enter into the China market? So first, I will let our panelists to do a little bit introduction of themselves and the organization. Yeah, Grace.
Yeah, my name is Grace, and I'm the founder and CEO of DaDaABC, and it's my pleasure to be here. And DaDaABC is an online English tutoring platform specializing one-on-one classes for kids from 5 years old to 16 years old. And we were founded in 2013, and we are the first and right now one of the biggest online platforms specializing in this area. And it's my great pleasure.
Thanks. Dun.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dun. I'm a co-founder of EdTechxAsia, also known as Homework Together. We are the largest online K-12 learning platform in China, partnering with over 100,000 schools, over 40 million users. And every day, we have over 100 million problems solved on our platform as we connect teachers, students, and parents and have them learn on our platform. Currently, we cover all the 31 provinces in China with over 400 cities. And we just started our monetization by offering premium content and live tutoring courses, currently averaging about 20 million RMB revenue per month. We love to partner with any international companies who want to come into China. I actually spent about 10 years in this country. And when I left China for the UK, the weather in Beijing was actually much better than the weather in London. But it seems the opposite now. But it's good to be back. Thank you.
Adam?
My name is Adam Turnbull, and I am working in an organization out of Guangzhou. I'm not originally from Guangzhou, in case you can't tell. I am from Canada, and I moved to China at a young age. I've been there for 14 years. I co-founded a company called EdTechxEurope 10 years ago, starting as a service provider and a content developer for education projects. And we have now recently acted as a startup again, and we are an incubator mostly for education technology, but for the Chinese children's industry. And we also have a RMB fund for investment.
So we've seen our panelists are from three market segments, the K-12, Xiao and Homework Together is, and also English learning from DaDaABC, and also early childhood. So I'll say these three market segments would be the most that we should look at for foreign companies. So I would like to ask our panelists to talk a little bit more of the market situations and trends in their particular market segment. So Grace, could you share with us a little bit about the English learning market in China?
I'd like to share about some change of the parents' thoughts in China right now. The need for the learning of English has become more and more popular for the parents in China. And right now, the parents normally want to let their children to start learning English at probably 5 or 6 years old. And instead of focus on the test of the English score, they are more willing to let their children to use English at a very early age. And we all know that in China, the online English tutoring for kids is at a booming stage. And right now, we have about 5,000 teachers all over the world, and mainly in UK, United States, and Canada, and Australia, and 50,000 paid users. Because of the scarce of the qualified foreign English teachers in China, there is only about 30,000 qualified foreign English teachers in China, and many in the big cities like Beijing and Shanghai. But the parents want the best courseware, best teaching quality, so the online platform can perfectly solve this problem. And we can see that there is only 1 or 2 billion markets last year, but this year we can see that it will be 10 times more, and still in a fast growth. And a couple years before, we can only have about hundreds of users the whole year, but right now we can get 5,000 new paid users every month, and our cash revenue for 1 month is raised to 100 million RMB. Yeah, that's a fast growth market.
Yeah. The English learning market is growing very, very quickly, and as Grace put it, Chinese parents always put they put great emphasis on education. And apart from the exam stuff, now more and more parents want more higher quality education. And as the middle class grows, so their consumption on education still grows very quickly. I will ask Duan about your market segment, the K-12 market. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge market.
Yeah.
In China. I think we're the first company in the world to actually start the homework automation process using an internet model. We started back in 2011. That was almost 6 years ago. And by now, as I mentioned, we have reached over 40 million users, while that's almost 2/3 of the UK population. It's only 1/5 of the student population, which is 200 million K-12 students in China. And it's only 1/10 of the 400 million parents, if you only count the moms and dads, parents population in China. And the other thing about the Chinese K-12 market is it's actually quite well privatized. So there is a huge private industry. There are different numbers. I guess JMDedu has the most accurate number, but I have it at over 200 billion USD, which is over 100 billion pounds. So that's a huge market. The other observation is that it's very technology poor. So although the government and schools are investing really heavily in technology, and they have been doing that for the last 10 years, it's still, because it's a huge country, it's still somewhat behind. Over the last 6 years, our experience was that the speed is also growing up. I think it's probably not growing as fast as the English learning market, because it's very much to do with the public sector, but it's still growing faster and faster every year. And we see our users double, triple every year as well. I think now is a great opportunity to have a look at the Chinese K-12 market, as it's getting more and more open, and it's getting more and more technology friendly, and more foreign content friendly as well. So I think now is the perfect time to have a look at the K-12 market in China.
Thank you, Duan. And Adam, could you share some insights on the early childhood market?
Sure. I think as Dun said, with the numbers that you typically get out of China, they're usually a bit mind-boggling, and I can continue that trend a little bit. With the announcement of the two-child policy last year, China is actually experiencing the biggest population boom in modern history. So that actually means that within 4 years, there will be another 100 million children between 0 and 4 years old. This is a big opportunity, but also a big challenge for both the public and the private sectors. Right now, there is currently 180,000 kindergartens in China. They need to have another 100,000 kindergartens in China within the next 5 years. That's actually a conservative estimate because kindergartens are highly privatized, and also kindergartens cover a young age from 2.5 up to 5 years old. There's also another big trend on privatization where we have community centers. Before it was public sector mostly. Private sector for kindergartens is now a big boom, and it's been booming for the last at least 5 years or so. But now there is a new one, and this is community centers and child daycare. Because the young parents in the 80s, who are the 80s and the 90s generation in China, you call 80后 and 90后, the gap between both of those generations in terms of what they want, what they know, and what they're okay with in education is massive. So when the young children are born with parents who are 90后, which are our younger, right? These guys are much more willing to offer smaller, high-quality classroom situations for preschool. So there was a lot of community centers and even out-of-home daycares, which is something that didn't exist. It still doesn't really exist at that level, but it's a growing market. This means that there is a huge opportunity in the 2C model because those daycares, those educators, and even those kindergartens that are new are typically inexperienced in education. But they have a lot of desire to offer high-quality content to the children. And so this is something that I would say is a very large opportunity in China.
Yeah. So as our panelists have pointed out, so there is huge opportunities in China, essentially in general. So let's dig a little deeper on the market opportunities, especially for foreign companies or foreign products and brands that want to enter into the China education market. I'll start with Adam because you have a decade experience of bringing foreign brands into China. So what kind of products would you say have the best shot in China market?
Well, I think right now, as Dun said, technology is a huge thing, and the acceptance of new technology in the Chinese market is unbelievable. Right now, if you're in China and you want to go to the store and pay for something, I don't think that many people carry cash anymore. And China used to run on cash. Yeah. People didn't have credit cards that much before. WeChat Pay, for example, is that platform that is completely taken 2 years, completely taken it over. Or, for example, Mobike, the ride sharing. 6 months ago, you wouldn't find these kind of bike sharing platforms, but now all over the tier 1 cities and starting the tier 2 cities, you can find them all across the streets. So the adoption of technology is very fast. And I think there was a speaker previously that did mention that as well, that if you have a new technology that has high value content, the adoption rate in China will be much faster than in other countries. Of course, we talked about opportunity, but the challenge of entering the Chinese market is still very vast. It's difficult. What we've done at ASK is we actually want to offer an opportunity for companies that are looking to enter China as a startup. So even if you have reached a fairly mature technology system or you have a new product that is already working in markets in the West, we actually treat it as a startup in coming into China because there are a lot of challenges in terms of legality, how you set up your legal entity and how you're going to license your technology, and also picking your joint venture partners. So you can do a wholly foreign-owned enterprise in China, but if you want to enter the education system, it's a long road. The best road for that is to have a joint venture, but that is a challenge in itself to find those right partners. And so we actually approach it as a startup. You want to come to China, we will offer you a platform, and we will offer you a place that you can experience the Chinese market, work together with other new technology and young people so that you can understand more about the market and the technology that you have. And also you have, in China called Menka, right? There's a lower barrier of entry. You don't have to come in with a massive investment. You can come in under a lower investment and do pilot programs. And this is sort of our take on what it is. Even if you have a mature startup, when you're entering the Chinese market, we, as a developer, we expect and we advise that you are also kind of approaching it as a startup as well.
Yeah, I love the advice. Yeah, if even though you're very mature, you have mature products in US or in Europe, but if you want to enter into China, you need a new startup mindset to find your new market, product fit in the China market. So I will go back to this more like entering strategy into China later. Dun, so you've mentioned that you've seen that now the market is more and more open to foreign content. So do you have any say on what kind of product would be very suitable for the Chinese market?
Well, for K-12, at least, I can share some of my thoughts. So there's this thing called Gaokao, which happens every year. It's a huge event in China. It happens for 2 or 3 days, typically, at the beginning of June. And every year, when this thing happens, it takes the headlines of all the newspapers and all the TV stations in China. And it's basically the university entrance exam that's taken by some 5-6 million K-12 students at the age of 18 every year. And it's a very high-stake exam that kind of determines the families and the students' destiny. But there's a little bit of a problem with the content and the format of this exam, because we have realized that the people, the human beings we need for the 21st century may not really fit into this kind of manufactured model. So even if they do really well in exams and they do really well in university, they probably still won't do very well in the workplace. And I think there was a lot of discussions about the new talent we need for the 21st century in this event as well. Chinese government also introduced this thing called core competencies, and there were 6 core competencies. And in order to achieve these core competencies, I think the content we need would not be the same as traditional content. And that's probably the reason why so many Chinese students are learning English. That's probably why so many schools have chosen to use STEM as part of their curriculum. So I think that's actually quite a good fit, because in terms of the new curriculum, a lot of countries, including the UK, the US, a lot of the European countries have advanced before China. So China has a huge market, but there is a shortage of supply of this kind of content and curriculum, but huge demand. So in general, I think anything that is not traditional mathematics, physics, chemistry, Chinese history, Chinese literature would be suitable. But I think maybe there's one trick, which is you need to localize the content. And it's really easier said than done, because even just talking about China is actually a huge, huge country with over 2,800 something districts. And there's a huge socio-economic gap. There's a big cultural difference between the north and the south and the west and the east. So it's a big, big job. And I would definitely echo with Adam on partnering with a local partner to do the distribution, to do the localization and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So so as Xiao, as Deng has mentioned, so China is traditionally very exam-oriented, but now I think international companies would have a great shot is actually not exam kind of material, but more on the new competency or 21st century skills that actually are what the Chinese parents and students are looking for, but cannot find in the China market yet. Yes, how about Grace?
Well, in our industry, I think that outstanding content suppliers will be very popular. Right now, we are cooperate with Pearson and Cengage Learning in a very deep way. And our target is the middle classes family, and they are more focused on the quality instead of the price of the cars. And for us, we are trying to find more and more suppliers and content creators in working co-working diverse way. And Otherwise, you know that there are tens of thousands of classes ongoing at DaDaABC platform every day. And we can gather more and more information and data of our students' studying habits and teaching patterns, and how to organize all the information, and you know, to help our teachers to enhance the teaching quality, and how to give the students more scientific representations of the results. And I think this is a huge opportunity and for the foreign companies. Yeah.
So I think we've mentioned technology and content. I think that's two big areas that that we're actually looking for international companies who can provide good solutions. So let's move a little bit. Actually, our panelists have also mentioned move a little bit to the how question. So if we got a great products for China, so how actually is the good way to enter into China? I actually want to first ask our panelists to share a little bit about their successful story. So first grade, so English learning or one-on-one online English learning is really, really competitive in China. So how do you establish yourself as an industry leader?
Well, because of the target is the middle class families, and you should know that you have to promote your brand in quite different ways. We do not have the marketing campaign at first, but we find hundreds of our key opinion leaders. They are monks, they are the 80s monk, and we let them to try our platform and give us the feedback, and they will promote our platform if they said it's good. And that's the way we begin our business. And right now we have the brand campaign and have many advertisements. But at first, I think that KOL is very important, and social media.
So the spreading of the brands is very important. Also, to understand the Chinese parents is very important. So how about Dun? You actually manage your way into the K-12 public school system is very hard. So how do you actually manage to do that?
I think if there's one word, the word is patience. It's very slow, and especially 99% of the K-12 schools in China are state-owned. So it's even slower to work with Chinese state-owned schools. That's why we have been working on this for 6 years. And we actually only started monetization 1 year ago, so 5 years into the business. And maybe in particular to foreign companies, I'll quickly share a story from about 100 years ago. 8 countries formed an army to enter China. And I think they were somewhat successful and looted some things even from China. But 100 years from, if you look at that event 100 years later from today, actually none of these countries got what they wanted with China. Some big companies, foreign companies, have tried similar ways to enter China. And if you don't know the result yet, maybe you can try accessing Google or Facebook in China. But there are lots of other companies that have successfully entered China by respecting China, and by respecting the Chinese government, by respecting the Chinese people, by respecting the Chinese culture. I think that's kind of the way to enter any market. And the best way to do that is actually to find a good partner and respect your partner. If you want to form a local team, then have enough respect for your local team and enough autonomy for your local team. And that's kind of what we did. Because we have about 500 people all over China, and they're based locally. So I mentioned we have users in 400 cities. And I actually gave a lot of autonomy to our local teams for them to decide what the operation strategy should be for their city, for those schools in their city. Because I believe even within China, the culture and the operation strategies should differ. So that's kind of why, and even so, you still need patience. It's very slow.
Yeah. So even for a Chinese company, you actually have to localize in each regions because they're very, very, very different. So the market is really fragmented. Different regions and different cities have different, textbooks and learning goals. So that's also true for foreign companies who want to enter into China. You really have to do the localization.
And maybe just one more thing.
Yeah.
JMDedu actually knows everything about Chinese EdTech market. So
Thanks.
I think if you don't know who you should talk to, you should talk to them first.
Thanks for the advertising, by the way. On that, I actually want to take the opportunity to do a little bit of advertising. So for us, we do most of our writings on education technology in China in Chinese, but we do offer a blog and a weekly newsletter actually on the Chinese education business in English. So if you want to dig a little bit more about the Chinese education market, you can subscribe or talk to us later. And the other thing is, if you really are thinking of going to China, we are holding a big EdTech event in Beijing this November. So if you're interested in attending or speaking or exhibiting, do talk to us after the panel. Thanks for bringing this opportunity on. And I'd like to turn to Adam. So do you have any successful case, because you're bringing foreign brands into China throughout your experience, like any successful case that the foreign company do successfully?
Well, yeah, otherwise it wouldn't be very successful of us. But I think one of the most recent successes we had, and I think when you touched on that, was getting into the public school system, especially for grade 1 and to high school. One of the things that we did with a Hong Kong entity that had new technology, a new product called Metis, was that we had 2 different channels. We wanted to build the channels with the public school system, but we knew that we couldn't, being a STEM product, we knew that it couldn't be at the junior high and high school level because those students are busy and they need to prepare for Gaokao. So we focused our curriculum and the development into kindergarten, but all the way to about grade 6. This is the most opportune age group for the public school system and also for parents accepting alternative subjects. So besides that, it's the same thing, a lot of patience, a lot of hard work, and showing your worth and making those cases to different districts in the government, and also then going to a 2C solution so that you can allow the parents to understand the importance of STEM education, or in that case it was STEM education, and give them an opportunity to grow from there. So I think it's a 2-pronged approach. You can't have one without the other. But right now, if you are sticking between 0 to 12 years old, you don't have to go through the government. You can do 2C solutions if you want. That is a big opportunity.
Thanks. So,
married a Chinese girl?
It's true.
Yeah, that's
okay, I would love to wrap up the session with one top advice from each panelist. So maybe from Grace.
One sentence is just like Dun said, I think that it is important to find a partner in the same mindset, and instead of breaking into the market alone. And for the foreign companies, it's better to provide the irreplaceable core value to the local companies, and it's better, I think.
Thanks, Grace. Dun.
Patience.
That's very good. Actually, you need it a lot because actually the initial entry, you meet a lot of Chinese partners. Give you a really great excitement, but we really need patience if you are entering into the market. Adam.
I think my advice for startups in technology wanting to enter China, when we talk about those macroeconomic numbers for the market opportunity, don't get too excited because it's a hard road, but don't look at trying to take a percentage of that opportunity. Look at your own growth curve and how China can help you approach that growth curve by itself. That's my advice.
Thanks all the panelists, and thank all of you for coming.
Thank you very much.